Buying and selling real estate can be a confusing and emotional experience. It helps to have a talented and trustworthy team working for you to protect your family and your finances. This is the Ask Ann Real Estate Podcast. Ask Ann to help you sell faster and buy smarter. Here's your host, David Hoke.
I'm David Hoke. I'm your host today for the Ask Ann Network. We're here live in studio with really my family today. Ann Hoke is the namesake and the lead agent behind Ann Hoke & Associates Keller Williams. And with us today, it's our pleasure to have our son, Ryan Hoke, who's an outstanding buyer agent, knows all sides of the transaction, but especially works with buyers. And we're going to talk about everything for your home and lifestyle, all about real estate. So, Ann, Ryan, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Just to set the stage for us, Ann and Ryan, as we get into the conversation, we're going to focus really on the importance of buyer representation today, because in the marketplace, the market's hot. Everybody's buying and selling. There's a real fury to try to find product. There's a shortage of inventory, or good inventory at least. People are buying homes, new homes under construction. And the challenge has become a lot of the myths associated with buying without representation. And just to set a couple other things to inform our audience, that last year alone, our team helped buyers alone save over $900,000 in the purchase of their homes by better negotiation, by finding things that might have been missed by others. And it's important, as we're going to talk through this conversation, to have help and representation. And since 2013, we've helped over 500 people buy homes. Ryan, the last 2 years in a row, I think sold more than 60. Is that about right, each year? So you've had a lot of experiences. So, Ann, just kind of set us up, get us started, and we'll kind of jump into the conversation.
Well, you talked about saving money on buying a home. When you're not represented, it is a national stat that you will lose money. And you're not only on the negotiation side, because we do know the value and what the homes are worth, but also when you're negotiating repairs and inspections and other things. Ryan, you want to kick in on that, how you save money when you're represented?
It's going to vary depending on whether you're referring to new construction or to an existing property. There's going to be several different ways to do that. But let's hit on new construction just for a minute, which applies to our buyer protection plan. The new construction on-site sales persons are going to sometimes lead your buyers to believe that they might save money by not being represented by you as an agent. It's hard for your buyers to see through when they don't have the experience. See, us as agents, we see it all the time. We live it. I've represented somewhere around 320 buyers since I've been in the real estate industry, and I see every day how different builders, depending on who you go to, offer incentives and so forth for you to use their lenders, and they'll throw in different add-ons and different upgrades, and you've just really got to be thorough and explain these things to your buyers. Oftentimes, if you use their lender, the lender will up the interest rate to cover for the closing costs that they're offering. If they're offering you some upgrades, they're going to find ways to cover their cost.
Exactly. I mean, buying a new home without help and being represented, it's like going to court without legal representation. It's similar.
Yeah, and let me ask a couple of things here, because by all means, we want to make sure anybody listening to the podcast does not appreciate how much we respect new product, new home building, new home construction. I have years of experience in on-site sales. Ryan's already mentioned the number of folks he's helped. I think this year alone, he's probably already written 7 or 8 contracts for new construction. So we love our builders, and buyers, even of existing homes, go through these same things. But we kind of talk about maybe 6 myths of buying a new home, and we've got a piece here that applies to those in new home construction, but they apply across the board. And the first one, maybe Ryan was starting to talk about a little bit, but the idea that the builder's agent will take care of me. And I think that's the first thing. Talk about what representation is, who works for whom in the transaction.
Sure. So the builder's agent, naturally, is going to be working for the builder. And then me as a buyer specialist, I'm going to be working solely for you as the buyer. And of course, the builder being represented by the agent has the builder's best interest in mind, and they are working strictly for the builder. So as far as trying to get some negotiations and trying to negotiate maybe some upgrades or maybe some closing cost in, the builder's agent is not concerned with how good of a deal you're getting as a buyer. They're just concerned with what the builder or the seller will accept typically.
But not only that, Ryan, you know in new construction very well. You also know there are sometimes builders out there make a mistake, and if you don't have an inspection or you don't have someone like you that knows the bricks and the sticks, you can really miss something very important.
So if I go in and I'm underrepresented, Ryan, I just walked in by myself looking to buy a home, I'm going to a builder site or even looking at a custom home, who's looking out for my interest then?
Nobody is, unless you're being represented by a buyer's agent. The builder is going to take care of, the seller is going to take care of our compensation. If they do not pay us compensation because you're going in unrepresented, then that will be absorbed somewhere else. The builder may have a higher profit margin on the home. The listing agent representing the builder might make a little bit more money. It's going to be absorbed somewhere.
So if I come in and I'm unrepresented, don't have an agent, I have nobody looking out for my interests, am I saving money?
I've never experienced a builder that would say, hey, here's my numbers. I will knock 3% or whatever the buyer's agent's commission would be off of this home.
Okay.
And until I see it in writing, that's not something that you can prove.
And there's some practical reasons for that too. I think a builder is trying, as you would expect them to be. They're business people. They're looking to protect their values in a given community, and they can't lower it for one by a percentage point and raise it for another.
And they've got to protect their appraisals, which you were alluding to.
Right.
And as excavation cost and costs go up for each phase they develop, the home prices are going to be going up. So they can't afford to see those go on a downward slope.
Yeah, and Ann, we've kind of focusing here for the moment on new construction, but shifting this same conversation quickly over to buyers of resale homes and such. The same things apply, that if I come in unrepresented, am I going to save money if I walk in, I don't have an agent, and I buy from the listing agent? Do I save money?
Yeah, that is definitely a myth in the market. People call off signs, they're not represented, and they feel like they're going to cut 3%, 2.5% off the price, and that's not true. As a listing agent, I represent the seller and their interest, my fiduciary duty to my seller. But as a buyer agent, and we have a team of buyer agents on our team, and they negotiate. They're tough on me. They are so tough because they represent the buyer and their fiduciary duties toward the buyer.
And I think what a lot of people would not know from the legal point, in real estate, commission is totally negotiable. So we need to make sure we emphasize that. But when a listing agent or an agent signs a listing with the seller is agreeing to pay a commission for both the listing agent and the buying agent. If there's not a buying agent, then that full commission then goes to the selling agent, is what we're saying here. And that's, I think, a misunderstood in the industry, not known by many, and that's where folks have an idea that they're unrepresented, they're going to save some money. Talk to us a little bit, Ryan, just about the difficulty of contracts. I mean, I know in new construction, there are standardized contracts in the industry. For resales, you use those, new construction, but just in general, the idea of the contracting process and things, and how important it is to have someone helping you through that process.
We have to be very careful as a buyer specialist, especially with a contract that we're not familiar with. Most builders are going to use their own contracts, sometimes written by their attorneys, sometimes other contracts that they have, come by over the years, and they might piece some of those together, but we have to be very careful. And it's a good idea for a buyer's agent to get a copy of the contract prior to the builder and the client and the buyer's agent and the listing agent meeting together, which a lot of builders do. They like to all meet together, decide on the terms, and draw up the contract at that point in time. It's a great idea for a buyer's agent to review that paperwork prior to them filling it out and signing it, because the fine print is definitely important to read. I've just about got the Tennessee Association of Realtors contract memorized on both the residential existing as well as new construction.
I guess after 300 successful closings, you'd get there, right?
And it changes. They do have periodic changes from year to year, but yes. But it's very important, I think, for them to read in detail the amendments, addendums, things that are added to the builder's contract as well. Another
detail Ryan does very well, actually David, you do too, is the detail, writing out in detail what the agreement is, upgrades you wanted or certain flooring you wanted, because I have seen buyers get a miss and the builders not do what they thought was agreed upon. And so that detail, you need a buyer representation.
Well, you're pointing me in the direction I wanted to head here, that talking again about the difference in probably 95% of what you list are homes that are existing homes, complete. You list some new construction, but most of it's in the resale market. So when somebody comes in, looks to buy a resale market home, there's enough things there that got to be documented, and what's going to stay in terms of any kind of furnishings and things, and a lot of details there. But when you're talking about new construction, if you're buying a home that's finished, a spec home, they might hear them called, or a model home, finished, that's one thing. But Ryan, you're selling a lot of homes today where it's a piece of dirt, right? And it becomes even more critical there, just the details and things that are part of the contracting phase. So people are buying something they can't see. They may see a house on another lot that looks like that. So just for a moment, talk about the importance of those things and where an experienced buyer agent can help the buyer through that process.
I have learned that you can never be too specific on a new construction pre-sale contract. Oftentimes we have buyers that walk into homes that the builder has built and they say, I want a house just like this. Well, they may be speaking of the finishes. They may be talking about the floor plan. They may like the floor plan, but they want it flipped. There's so many aspects when you get down into the details that they might be talking about when they said, I want a home like this. The finishes on the plumbing fixtures and lighting fixtures, the type of hardwood, whether or not they want their garage door or their garage insulated. There's just so many specifics.
I know, Ryan, you're excellent at the details to the point of which way the door is swinging open. And you get into that bathroom that's joining between two rooms and it's an L shape. Little bitty details like that most people do not think about.
And some builders don't want to incorporate pocket doors, just for example. But pocket doors can be very, very well utilized. They can also be overused. But there's many details. And most of the time, unless you're using a pocket door, which requires a different framing than a conventional door, most of the time those door swings can be chosen on the framing walkthrough. Another thing, clarify with the builder, are we going to have an electrical walkthrough? Are we going to have a plumbing walkthrough? They may decide that they want a plumbing drop in the laundry room or out in the garage for a wash tub sink. Those are the things that you've got to constantly be thinking about and over communicate and try to do that in writing. If it's not on the original contract, just email through the listing agent to the builder, however they prefer you do that, but just constant communication on new construction, particularly pre-sales, is very important.
Good. We've got a few more minutes here. I want to touch on a couple other things for us, and one of them kind of fits with all we've talked about. You've been talking about details, but what about the myth that the base price includes everything?
That's something that we hear a lot. And not as much now as we used to.
And I suppose it could sometimes, right? The base price could include everything.
It could, but in most instances, when you walk into a model home, you're going to find, typically, depending on the price point, you're probably going to find somewhere around $20,000 to $35,000 in upgrades. And most builders, we work with several builders that are very good at disclosing that in their contract. That when you walk into our model home, our base price may not include 5-inch hardwood. It may be 3-inch hardwood. Our base price may include a fiberglass molded shower, not a tile shower. Our base price may include chrome plumbing fixtures as opposed to satin nickel or oil rub bronze. So most builders are really good about disclosing that, but it's being aware of that and making your buyer aware of that. You might be able to upgrade to a 30-year dimensional shingle where they might be using a 20-year. If you're planning on staying there for 12 or 15 years, that is probably a wise investment.
Okay, so another point I'll ask, maybe Ann can kind of start out with this one, but a buyer may think, well, it's new construction, what can go wrong? But the same thing would apply to a resale. So you mentioned, I think maybe Ann, earlier on, home inspections, things of that nature. So what's the aid of a buyer agent in the buyer process of a resale? And Ryan, you can kind of focus that back in on new construction as well.
Well, agents are trained to know exactly what to look for, in inspections. For example, I had a resale home, 2 years old, and when in the interview, he said, my utilities are outrageous. I don't know what's up with this home, And sure enough, there was a lack of installation. It passed codes, but it shouldn't have.
Yeah, that was maybe a little longer than 2 years ago. I
Yeah.
still remember that house had no attic insulation above the ceiling in the home. That was,
Right.
well-intentioned, a 2-year-old home, and the
Right.
minute that was discovered, the builder and the installation installer took care of that. But
Right.
it
But
really
my point
surprised
is,
all of
if
us.
that gentleman had representation when he bought the home brand new,
had a home inspection.
that agent would have found that. Exactly.
And it's not us as agents. It's not our job to be home inspectors.
Right.
It's our job to get our buyers set up with the appropriate people to inspect the appropriate things. And a generalized home inspector will note many of these items, and he would have caught the insulation not being in the attic.
Right.
But then they typically call in a specialist in that field to take that further to ensure whatever it is that seems out of whack, make sure that that's correct.
Yeah, I think there's a misconception just because a house is going through the code process, there's inspectors inspecting framing, electrical, and other mechanical inspections, that everything's being looked at. And I think you're telling us that's not quite the case, right?
You've got to remember that these codes inspectors are swamped, especially in this new construction market right now, and they're people just like we are. And it's easy to overlook things. They can get distracted just like we can.
Right.
So, I mean, he may have gotten a call and forgot to climb up in the attic. Who knows? So it's very easy to be overlooked. Home inspectors are very, very thorough if you hire a reputable home inspector. And you can never go wrong. I mean, it's obviously the buyer's choice. Because the home did pass codes, most of your builders are offering a 1-year builder written warranty. Sometimes it's a 5-year structure. Sometimes it's a 10-year. Just depends. Most of the time, like on the mechanicals of the home, we worked with a couple of builders that offer a 2-year warranty on the plumbing and electrical inside the walls, those types of things. But just remember, it's the buyer's choice on whether or not they want to invest that money on a home inspection, or if they want to go with the 1-year builder warranty that they typically offer. And that's another thing that you need to make sure, what is this builder's warranty? And typically they have it typed out and for you to go through and read and scrutinize to be sure you understand everything.
And some builders offer extended builder warranty as well.
Yeah,
correct?
they do.
Yeah.
They do.
One last thing before we roll into a close here, and the help that a buyer agent can bring around the closing of a home in terms of the timing, the communication, that applies to new construction, it applies to resale. It's the importance of good communication, because I presume, in fact I know, as you come close to closing time, a lot of things can go wrong, and unfortunately a lot of times the buyer is the last one to know, or sometimes the seller is the last one to know the buyer's having trouble.
That brings up a really good point that I should have covered earlier, but it's really important to explain to your buyers that the home buying process or the building process depends a lot on weather and subs and that sort of thing. So just remember, give yourself a buffer on the time as well. But yes, if it's raining a lot towards the end of your building process, it'll be really hard to get a yard in, which you've got to have seated in straw to get your certificate of occupancy to occupy the property.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I remember a trivia fact from a few years ago, some research. I think there's 70,000 pieces in an average Toyota car, and a home, that's a small number compared to what goes in the average home. When you look at all the individual fasteners and things, probably a couple 100,000 or more pieces. So a lot of pieces can go wrong. A car's built in a factory. The home's built out in the elements, so it's not going to be perfect.
With natural materials.
It's never going to be perfect, absolutely.
It's never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the timing. There are 88 things that can go wrong once from the home to the closing table, and that's what you need an agent to represent you.
During those turbulent times.
I'm going to say more than 88, but we'll leave it at 88.
That sounds good. I knew we'd get at least one funny. We got too serious for the podcast here, but we're also going to close on a serious note that, and we mentioned in some of your radio advertising and other things, and we're talking face-to-face with our buyer prospects today, but the importance of hiring a buyer agent. We've talked about that on the builder side, that you don't save money without a buyer agent normally, that the buyer agent's there to protect your interests. Without buyer representation, you're really relying upon just your own knowledge and things. And there's some legal things that require the seller and the seller agent to be upstanding and so forth, but still there's not the passion, there's not the real focus behind them. But along the way then, you came up with an idea to develop something called we now call the Ask Ann Buyer Protection Plan. So just talk to us a little bit what's behind the plan and why we felt it was necessary to develop that.
Well, we were just saying it's our promise that we'll negotiate the best price possible for your new home or resale home, either way, that you are purchasing, and that if you're building or is Ryan helping you, we'll do our best to help you stay in budget and let you make those decisions. We know what the return on the investment, what's the best return on your investment that you're going to have. We will support you every step of the way. There are so many steps that we cover for you legally, from the very beginning to the closing table. And we always have your interest at our heart, number one. You are our client. We represent you, and we don't represent the builder or the seller as far as Ron being a buyer agent. We're always going to represent your interest at heart.
Well, I'm going to add one thing to it, and it's something we've put a little extra kicker is if you don't love the home you buy with the Ann Hoke & Associates Keller Williams team, we'll sell it for free. And there's some disclaimers to that, but we want to make sure we have satisfied buyers. We're going to do all we can as a team to, as Ann's already said, negotiate the best price. If you're building a home, stay within budget. If you're buying a home, even then, stay within your budget and not be tempted to overspend when the appetite drives you a little higher. But you're just gaining a lot of experience from Ryan, from other agents in our buyer agent team, from Ann, our entire support team. So it's great to know that the Ask Ann Buyer Protection Plan is there behind you, supporting you. And Ann's already said it's not just a plan, it's our promise. So it's been a great time. Ryan, good to have you in the studio with us for the first time. And it's been nice chatting with you again today. And as you might imagine listening to the podcast, we all work in the same office. We're here in a nice studio at the Fish in downtown Nashville. But most of the days we're in our offices, and we're running up and down, scurrying up and down the hall, cell phones, car phones, driving every place you can drive, mad people. We kind of pass in the hallway, pass in the night. But we can almost read each other's minds on most of these things, and you're only getting the serious side of it. You're not getting the funny side of things today. So until we meet again the next time, this is David Hoke on behalf of Ann Hoke & Associates Keller Williams, Ryan Hoke, the entire team of the Ask Ann Network, saying thank you for listening.
The Ask Ann podcast. To get your real estate questions answered in a future episode, you can send them in to askann@annhoke.com. For more information about how you can buy or sell your home with Ann and her team, find more info at annhoke.com.